Well, hello out there in YouTube land. I got a video for you here on my generator first startup and the break-in period. I thought I would share it with you. So let's not waste any time and let's get started with this. This is Surviving 2 coming to you with another video. Well, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it. I actually did the startup and the break-in period quite a few months back, and I didn't actually film but one section of it running, but the rest of it I got quite a few pictures of it and everything else, and I compiled some other stuff here for you, so I thought I'd share it with you on what I did and kind of why I did it and everything else, and maybe it'll help somebody else out there. And what I got was a Champion inverter. It's a dual fuel generator. It runs on LP gas or gasoline. And the reason why I got that is that I want to mainly run it on LP gas because I've seen tests of what ethanol fuel will do to a carburetor. And there is a gentleman, God, I can't think of his name right now. I'll stick his name down here in the bottom. He's been running a test of engines for over a year now. And what ethanol fuel, straight ethanol fuel, and ethanol fuel with additives added into the fuel will do to carburetors, and it is not a pretty sight. So that's why I decided to go ahead and get the LP gas, and I have got right now only 20 pound canisters stored. I want to get some 40-pound canisters and some others, but right now I haven't had the funds to get to 40s, but the 20s are going to be good for right now. That'll get me by for a little bit. So then I got to thinking, well, I need to cover this thing, and I need to store it and everything else, and I need to be able to run it if it's raining. So I looked at Champions. This cover right here is just for storage. And okay, if it's stored in this, can I run it? No, I can't run it in that. So now then, to run it in rain, I need to get a cover. So this is the cover they recommend. So now I'm going to swap covers for that. And I don't want to do that. And that's a pain in the ass. So I found this cover here that I can both run it and store it. So now, how do you fill it? How do you put gas in it? How do you work it? Okay, here, this cover that I've got, you just flip the lid, it's Velcro covered, and I can actually pour gasoline into it. So that makes it nice and handy. And if I got to move it around, all I do is take one side of it, roll it up, hook it, and then pull the handle up, and I can wheel it around and move it from place to place. So what happens if I got to run it? Well, when I run it wet, all I do is I roll three sides of it up, leave the electrical side of it down, and then as you can see, it's vented so it can run and it stays acceptable. And then if it runs when it's dry, I run all four sides in the up position and it stays cool, and I can run it when it's dry. So that works out really good. The next thing I got for it was a hour and an RPM meter for it, and I mounted it to the chassis, and then I took the lead and ran it around to the spark plug wire and wrapped it around the spark plug wire the required amount of times, and then took a tie wrap and tie wrapped it off to it so that I can keep track of the hours on it so that I can do the required maintenance required for it. Now the next thing I wanted to do was something very important, very, very, very important, because any engine has contaminants floating around in the oil. Well, I wanted to pull the dipstick out of this thing. It's only plastic. It's not very good. So what I got was a magnetic dipstick. You can see the magnetic one compared to the standard one. And I was going to put it in there. I did put it in there. Worked out great. So now I start getting the oil to put into here. One of the first things in the oil I wanted to put in there, and something I've run in all my vehicles, every one of them, was a micro lubricant. It impregnates into the metal. It goes deep into the metal, and it creates a bond into the metal and in between the metals, so that it stays lubricated way down into there, and it's really good for it. And you can get any kind you want. I've gone with Z-Max since I've been using vehicles, and since I've heard about it and they came out with it, so I've been doing that. So this is the amount that I put into there. Forget what the amount was I put in there. You can see it on the side of the container. And I added it onto the oil. And my oil required, I think it was 20 ounces of oil, something like that. You can see it on the side of the container where I poured the oil into there. And I use synthetic oil, and required amount of oil and the required type of oil, and poured it into the side of the generator, and then put the dipstick in there. And then I required it, the manufacturer themselves required a 5-hour break-in period. Now they want you to vary the load. They want you to run it at about 50% or below the rated wattage of the generator, because that way it helps the piston break in and seat, and it also helps the stator in the windings of the generator itself to slowly heat up and cool off. So you run your load up a little bit, then run it down, and then run it up, and then run it down. And that way it helps the windings heat up and cool off, heat up and cool off. And then you do that for about 5 hours off and on. And I'll go ahead and run the video here of me running this old heater I've got that I keep out in the shed when out in my Texas man cave. And I'll run this video here real quick. Now that's me running it on LP gas. Like I say, I don't want to run gasoline in this thing unless I absolutely have to. That's going to be the last choice of running gasoline in it. I do keep gasoline on hand, and I keep a fair amount stored up, and I keep an additive in the gasoline to keep it from going bad. And it has done me well over the years, the additive. I hadn't had any problems with it. I use it in my tractor and use it in other things. Now, my 2-cycle engines, I have had issues with them in the past. Took them up to mechanics and had them worked on, and the mechanics have specifically told me do not use oil mixed in with gasoline. They said buy a pre-mixed certain type of can of fuel, and I have gone to that and stuck with it and not had a problem with any of my 2-stroke engines ever again. And I swear by this stuff now. So yeah, it's fast gas, so I swear by that stuff now. I don't go to anything else and I'll use that. Now, there might be other stuff that's pre-mixed like that they sell in a can that you can use that probably works good. That's fine. I'll use this stuff and hadn't had a problem with it. But anyway, excuse me. So after the 5 hours went by and the watt-hour meter said it was good, then I went ahead and shut it down and set it up on blocks, and I drained it out, and I went ahead and pulled the dipstick out. And here's a picture of the dipstick. Yeah, all that contaminant was floating around in the engine and the dipstick caught it. So I wiped it off on a towel and take a look at what was on that dipstick. Look at all that crap. All that metal, all that stuff was floating around in that engine. So anyway, I took all that, put it all back in the engine. And didn't put it all back in the engine. I went ahead and dumped it all out of the engine, put all the new stuff back in there, filled it all back up with exactly what I had before, the micro lubricant, put the oil back to its stated levels and everything else, put it all back together. Excuse me, got a tickle in my throat. Hang on, let me get this tickle under control. There we go. Yeah, so I put in the Z-Max again, put the oil back up to level, filled it all back up into the engine, everything else, and put the dipstick back in there and everything, put the magnetic one back in there to make sure it catches any other contaminants that might be floating around in there still. And then I stuck it back up, made a pad, a small pad, and stuck it up, as you can see, and had some other stuff where my tractor was, and then I wasn't happy with that, so I decided to expand that pad a little bit, and then I went ahead and as rains came, I noticed that the cover itself was it was getting wet, so it wasn't made for staying out in the weather and getting rained on all the time. It was made for maybe intermittent rain, but then staying covered. So I decided to make a awning for that particular area, and I put that tarp up and set it up like that, so it at least protects everything a little bit better. So that's me and starting it up and getting it broke in and done. So now I'm ready for next Texas crazy winter storm, if I decide to lose power around here again, you know, which I didn't last winter, but if we do lose power around here this next time, I'll be set up for it. And I'm planning on doing a video on how I'm going to interconnect the power from the outside to the inside without having to run a cord from the outside to the inside. Most people don't realize it. There's already a path set from the outside of the home to the inside of most homes. It might not be 100% legal, but it works. Being an electrician, I know how to do it. It's easy. It's simple. There's already wires leading from the outside of your homes to the inside of your panel boxes. And from your panel box, all you got to do is make some wire connections and go from there. You know, it's simple. So I'm thinking about making a video and doing a little show and tell on how to do that. Maybe, you know, do a drawing, set up some drawings and stuff like that, and show you how to do that. Fairly simple. So anyway, I'll catch y'all on the next one. Hope this helps somebody out there. Y'all take care. Later.
I want to thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more in the future that I put out, just subscribe. Until then, later.